All right, Randy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Having some internet issues. Perfect. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you guys for joining. Like I said, my name is Rebecca. It is not Critical Start Events. I am the Customer Marketing Manager here. So we're happy to have you at our first customer webinar of 2024. Before we get started, I'm going to just review a couple of quick housekeeping items for you. So we can go to the next slide, Randy. This session is being recorded. You'll receive the recording here in the next 24 hours after the session. We're going to be using polls today throughout the event. So those will get launched throughout, like I said, and you can answer those on the right-hand section panel. We are also going to be using the chat today, so please feel free to send your questions, your thoughts in the chat there so we can interact with you. And everyone here is automatically muted. If you have a question that's just burning to come out and you want to ask it verbally, just raise your hand and we can bring you on stage. If not, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function. We'll be monitoring those and make sure we get to them. So with that, I'm going to get to the good stuff and pass it over to Randy Watkins, Critical Start CTO, to kind of take us on a journey today. Thanks, Randy.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Appreciate everybody spending their time with us this afternoon or this morning going into afternoon, depending on your time zone. My name is Randy Watkins. I'm the CTO for Critical Start. Great to see a lot of familiar names and I guess organizations in the chat today. I've been with Critical Start for 12 and a half-ish years, so still getting my feet wet, but I think I have a pretty good lay of the land. Today, we're going to walk through risk assessments. So high level of the agenda, intro to risk assessments, what do they actually mean, where do they come from, a few stats from some surveys that we've run. We'll talk through the risk assessment landscape. We'll talk through leveraging third parties, some stats behind that from another kind of study that's out there. Then we'll dive into our actual risk assessment module. I'll show you a demo, and then we'll talk about how to get started. Like Rebecca said, please absolutely drop your questions into chat, any feedback that you have. When it comes to risk assessments and framework alignment and, different compliance assessments and rules, everybody seems to have a lot of different knowledge across the board. So this is one of the things I get most excited about gaining additional perspective from. So for all of the kind of CISOs, directors down to the analyst level, it impacts everybody's job. If you have little tips, tricks, tidbits, questions, you'd like to gain additional perspective, drop it in the chat. This isn't just me talking to you. It's also a community of your peers that you might be able to get some additional insights from. So fun stuff. Carrying on. So some key findings from our cyber risk landscape report. 66% of organizations face major challenges with visibility and insight into their cyber risk posture. 61% of executives feel there's a gap between risk and investment. 74% of organizations look for proactive risk reduction strategies. And then 93% both need to set holistic or have a need for holistic cyber risk management, and they want to reduce their cyber risk. That one's kind of a duh, right? What all these stats point back to is we need a more holistic approach towards risk reduction. And I've written a few white papers in conjunction with our director of product marketing, Jennifer Annie Crow, that goes through kind of ebbs and flows about the security trends from reactive to proactive, right? I mean, we go all the way back to antivirus, initial firewalls, talk about next-gen firewalls, network detection and response, the NDR product set, packet capture, all the way through to now EDR, EPP, SIM, the evolution of SIM multiple times. And it's really just this cyclical wave of going back and forth between reactive and proactive security controls. And when we say that, and we are a managed detection and response company. Detect and respond, something has to happen before we can do something about it, right? We can't detect and respond to a threat that hasn't kind of hit yet. So when we look at proactive security controls, which is where we see a lot of organizations wanting to pivot back to, it's hard to do that when you're always on your heels from the last cyber attack. You're always trying to find the next celebrity exploit. You're always responding to attackers that are inside the environment or the garden variety attacks that are so easy to launch with ransomware as a service, for example. So we see a lot of organizations leveraging MDR, not necessarily to solve a detection and response problem. That's just the tactical piece that we contribute. What they're really trying to do is pivot their strategy back to a proactive stance, and dealing with detection and response is one of those things that allows them to reallocate those resources towards more proactive security measures. And then when we look at how do you address that holistically? It's generally aligning with some sort of model, framework, or guidelines. So when we look at that landscape, there's plenty to choose from, right? I mean, NIST CSF is a fan favorite. I really like NIST CSF. I like 27,001, 27,002 is okay. 853, sure. 171, that one's definitely up and coming. We see a lot more organizations starting to adopt that. The CIS critical controls for V8 is a solid one as well. The ASD 35 was one of my old favorites, the Australian Signals Directorate. If you haven't looked at that one, you can always overlap, mix and match these controls. And then on the regulation side, you have everything from HIPAA, high trust, SOX, PCI is, we don't even list that. Actually, we do list it. Okay. It's like a 4-letter word internally. PCI is just the bane of everyone's existence. I know plenty of recovering QSAs, but there's always some element of, framework to build a security strategy around. So the first poll question that we have is, which of the following is a driver to your organization's security? Rebecca opened that one. Perfect. Thank you. So if you go to the polls tab, it is on the right-hand side next to chat messages. You'll see poll QA. You can answer that. I'm going to drop in a framework. Risk assessments are more tailored for your organization. And then frameworks, if you want to refer back to the slide that I just had up with all the necessary frameworks listed. Here's an example of those controls, catalogs, guidelines, standards, regulations, etc. So let us know what you think there. Looking at the votes, regulations seem to drive quite a bit of it. More alignment around framework, that's good. And then if you do have a specific framework, guideline, regulation that you follow, drop that in chat. Let's see what everybody's aligning to. I know a handful of the customers I've talked to within the last couple of months are all NIST CSF. But like I said, growing movement towards 171, especially where there are international customers. There seems to be a lot of overlap with the ISO certs there. Looks like regulations is winning. Oh, no, now evened up. Regulation and framework seem to be tied. Any good chat going on? Yep, 171, 853. Yep, those are good ones, especially when it comes to identity. I think 53 has some updated guidance that I like following, primarily because it doesn't call for rotating passwords. So good to see some decent alignment around, at least some foundational set of principles to develop a security strategy. So why do organizations conduct risk assessments? Different levers, kind of depending on the different roles and personas. CISOs are usually looking for security budget. And this is what triggered us to build in this module. So we talked to a number of different CISOs and they said, hey, my CFO is getting more involved. And I've talked to folks at Microsoft, folks at Palo Alto, folks at CrowdStrike. They all see a growing interest from the CFO when it comes to procurement of security products. So I had a number of CISOs say, hey, I need help with two things. One, justifying the budget that I've already got. So what did I do with it? How are we measurably better today than we were yesterday? And two, why do I need the additional budget that I've requested for the coming year? So what gaps are we trying to shore up and why? So when we look at kind of the different personas, there's usually different kind of reasons for wanting to have some level of risk assessment done, whether it's more tactical to kind of drive operational efficiency, to identify where you have controls gaps, whether it's more on the regulatory compliance side. A lot of times now we're hearing it comes back to cyber liability insurance, which is a massive driver of all things cybersecurity these days. A growing number of customers looking to potentially self-insure. So you need to assess to be able to kind of convince leadership that you're capable of doing that self-insurance, but a number of different reasons for doing this. And here's what the process typically looks like. Usually there's a proposal of a risk assessment. You're going to pick some sort of framework, align with a third party. Generally, third parties are involved as opposed to just internal risk assessments because they can tend to be biased. If you don't have a third party, a lot of people, when they think third party risk assessments, they immediately go to like the big three, the EYs, the Deloittes, the PwCs, Booz Allen. That's going to cost you. A lot of times what I would recommend is actually start with your VAR. If you have a value-added reseller, reach out to them, see what they recommend, see what they do. We have a ton of great partners, truly strategic partners that do perform full assessments to the framework of your choosing. They will do all the interviews, they'll collect all the evidence, they'll compile it in a nice report, they'll deliver debriefs and executive briefings. So that's where I would recommend starting, unless you're mandated to do one of the massive six-figure assessments. Then Booz Allen, we're kind of mandated to get one through the big three. So there are reasons for doing that. But once you kind of pick the framework, you identify the scope, you go through and select the tooling. Again, if you're using a third party, a lot of times they'll bring in the tools, then they will do the interviews, or you can do interviews, gather that evidence, evaluate all the risk, start suggesting controls, and then create and share the report. That's where you're going to start bubbling it up to the senior leadership after you develop that roadmap. This is really what's driving roadmap development, or should be driving roadmap development. I know for the last 3-4 years, we've been kind of playing threat-based whack-a-mole, where it's like, hey, what's the latest and greatest? It always seems to be ransomware. So let's constantly improve our controls around preventing ransomware. But now that we're moving towards more proactive controls, at least from what I'm seeing, there's more controls to take into account and more security posture assessments available. Looking, if you're familiar with NIST-CSF, further to the left in the identify and protect phase, as opposed to waiting for the detection and response to come around. Now, here's the second poll question. Does your organization align to a framework? And here's a couple of different choices in here: CSF, 171, ISO, CIS, or other. Drop it in chat. Eric, I know you already said 171 and 853. I want some additional feedback on what's popular out there. And I know I'm talking pretty quick. It's because I've had like 3 or 4 cups of cold brew, and we only have a half hour. I want to make sure to get through all this and show a meaningful demo. The recording will be available. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I'm not difficult to get a hold of. Randy@criticalstart.com. All right, let's see what kind of frameworks we got. CSF seems to be the predominant winner. And I agree with that. It's really easy to adapt. It's really adaptable to the business. They have a ton of details and information out there about how to bring it in. If you want more information on CSF from our perspective, I did do a webinar for CSF 2.0 when that was released, talking about the govern pillar, some of the additional pieces they put in around third-party vendor risk management, which if you're a CrowdStrike customer, I hope you have recovered successfully. That is a third-party vendor risk. So unfortunate, but it happens, I suppose. So you can go check out that webinar if you want kind of our take on CSF2. Otherwise, you can check out the CSF landing page. They have tons of different run books, kind of modifications to controls. It's a fantastic framework, and it looks to be the winner in this case. Now, let's quickly talk about leveraging third-party expertise. We did a study with Forrester. We looked at the anticipated advantages of working with third parties. 36%, 37%, 39% take a more proactive approach, scale better, and better ability to stay current with new threats and risks. Kind of a duh again. I mean, a lot of these studies are fairly self-serving, and I won't beat around the marketing bush there. I'm fairly direct with it. If you see a sponsored study, just look for the underlying theme and you can guess what the stats are going to reflect. This is generally what we see when we talk to customers and prospects around what they're expecting to get from working with a third party. A lot of our customers and prospects are looking to move more proactive, and they don't want their resources delegated towards reactive controls. And this really kind of rings through the risk assessment piece as well. They're really looking to shore up their security posture in a more holistic approach, and they need a third party's help with that. So let's talk about our risk assessment piece, our module, as we call it. So it's more than just collecting information. It does help align analysts to establish frameworks. We are working on automated crosswalk, which will be pretty cool. But really the goal was to drive that kind of budget request, budget justification, and help organizations identify their gaps. The cool piece about our risk assessment is we are baking in elements of peer benchmarking. So we have over 1,000 different companies. I believe it was 1,100 that we started out with, and we've since collected more information. Those companies that we benchmarked go across 16 different verticals and 3 different sizes per vertical. So when you kick off your assessments, you'll notice that those questions are asked. And they provide deeper insights into vulnerabilities or gaps in your security posture. So with that, I am going to pivot to a demo. Number one rule about doing live demos, you don't do live demos, but I'm going to do one anyways. This is pretty straightforward to look at. You can see I'm in the risk assessment kind of portion module of our core platform. So if you don't log into core, do log into core. If you don't know how, get in touch with your CSM. They'll help you out. You can see we have a number of different assessments here. So we have the quick start assessment. This is 15 questions. It crosswalks to about 60%. I'll talk about that in a second. We have CSF 1.1, 2.0, critical controls V8, and then 171. There's more assessments coming. We have to procure licensing for all of these and then bake it into the platform. SOC 2 Type 2 is really difficult to do that with. ISO 27001 coming soon. We also have HIPAA High Trust on the radar. That is a very expensive one to license. So we're working through all of those and getting them baked into the platform. But when you go to launch one of these assessments, we say get started. Again, you'll choose your assigned user. You can assign a reviewer, which is optional. I'm already selected in a specific size and in vertical. You can input your assessment title, description, and kick it off. Just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to pivot over into the assessments tab where we've already completed a ton of these. So we can dive into, let's go into this 171 and show you what it looks like on the back end. So what we're doing is we're surfacing all of the different controls in question format. You can see there's 110 questions here. You have the ability to filter based on is it completed or not? How is it tagged? So you can look at very specific controls. You can look at flagged questions, and you can flag questions up in the top right. We give what the actual control is itself, a little bit of details about the control and the requirement, who's most likely to get tagged to this, and then you can select your kind of level of implementation. So it's not a Boolean value. It's not like yes or no. Are you compliant, partially compliant, fully compliant, or is this not applicable? You can capture your evidence with attachments, and then you can preview the answer and comments after you put those in. If we go to some of our other assessments, let's go to a quick start real quick. Let me see. Quick start assessment. Here we go. So quick start assessment is one where we actually made it a little bit easier to go through. Let's see why that didn't open up. And we've put in more descriptive. Oh, here's the number one rule about not doing a live demo. So in the quick start assessment, we actually put in some pretty descriptive controls so you can more easily map up with it. Let me just go back. I'll launch one. It is not terribly difficult to do. We'll go into quick start. We'll select the vertical. There's already software. We'll select the size. We'll put assessment title, test, and then we'll select a due date. That's required. We'll say it's due tomorrow. We'll assign this to Larry. Now, as it spins up, what you'll see is 15 questions, again, mapping back to NIST, CSF, and it's going to be more prescriptive in what it is. So even if you don't have a strong security background, you'll be able to see kind of what the expectations are for the different levels of control implementation. And this may just not want to launch for me. Maybe our server's running CrowdStrike on the back end. Cheap shot, but I had to make it. All right. We'll exit out of that one. The quick start is available for anybody online. You don't have to be a critical start customer to take it, but you guys are critical start customers. So we'll talk through the options that are available to you. Now, once you fill out your assessment, you will see those assessments populate inside of the dashboard. You'll get an idea of your current state versus your target state. So it will track your trends over time. You'll be able to show kind of an increase in different levels of security posture across the different controls. And then we also do the peer benchmarking against your vertical. And if we can dig into these, And apologies, our demo system might be acting up on us a bit here. Or maybe it logged me off. Here we go. Just need a quick refresh. There we go. So if we click into this, what you'll see is peers over here on the right, and then the assessment that we took on the left. We showed the difference in kind of the high level category as well as the individual controls underneath. So you can identify, hey, we probably do need to do something about regular risk assessments or risk management strategy. We are behind the pack there. When it comes to detection, we're 50% greater than our peers because we're using critical start, detect, and respond, but we've limited what they can do from a response perspective. So we probably need to pick it up a little bit on the response section. And then recovery is abysmal. So, let's really try to put some effort into communications and developing an IR plan that we can back up with some tabletop exercises. So some pretty solid information that comes across here. And then you can also compare it to your last assessment. Since there's only one quick start in the books, it's going to look the same. But the goal is to show trends and differences between your assessment that you took 6 months ago and what you took last month. Since this just popped up, let's see if I can go into the assessments real quick and show what that quick start assessment looks like. Here it is. So we're a little bit more descriptive in terms of what the controls are and what your peer level is. And then if we click through some of these, you can see pretty verbose descriptions of the different implementation levels. And that's what's going to go back and populate that dashboard, as well as some of the charts and reports after you fill this out. So it's a relatively easy module to use. And that's kind of why we built it. We talked to a number of customers that did have ServiceNow, they did have Archer, they had different GRC components or different GRC kind of modules. They're using like security scorecard that was fully automated, but they wanted a way to be able to capture the evidence in a kind of digestible format that would automatically kick out some reports, and they wanted that peer benchmarking, which is fairly valuable when you're trying to encourage leadership to invest more in security so you can catch up to the rest of your peers. So the real goal was to build something that was quick and easy to use. As you can see from that demo, once it loads up, it's extremely easy to click through. It can also be handed over to a third party. So if you use a value-added reseller to deliver that assessment and you want them to do it inside of our platform, easy enough. We can make them a login. They can log in, go through, collect all the evidence, do the interviews. Super simple. If you already have an assessment done, say, Eric, you've already done a 171 assessment, you want to port that in, you can download the template for our assessment, enter in all the responses from your assessment, click submit, and it will automatically populate inside of the dashboard. So, pretty easy to use, fairly intuitive, very low ramp. Now, if you look at where we're actually trying to compete, Excel's, we would love to replace Excel, including with risk registers coming soon. Other MDRs and MSSPs, obviously we do, kind of compete there. And then if you look at the larger suite of Archer or ServiceNow, we're just easier to use. It may not be as full featured or as full function, but the idea is something that you can immediately do quickly instead of lingering for 6 to 12 months trying to get something done. Where we're not trying to compete is massive third-party auditors. We don't want to compete with the big four. If you're doing one of those assessments, it's going to likely be paired up with something else. But we do encourage you to reach out to partners. So how do we get started? 2 ways. The quick start assessment, you can do that today. Should be right in your platform. If it's not, let us know. We'll put it in there. It is 100% free. If you are a customer, not a customer, you can access it at the quick start sign up. Tell all your friends. If you have friends that need to do a quick start assessment, they want a really high level mapping to CSF, fantastic. If you want the Critical Start Risk Assessment Essentials free trial, you only have to answer a single poll question, wait 48 hours, and then you will have 90 days of pure, unbridled assessment bliss. So that poll question is here. Are you interested? in a free trial of Critical Start Risk Assessment Essentials. 90 days, we turned it on. It'll get activated in your portal within 48 hours. And then you can go out and fill out any of those assessments, whether it's CIS, 171, CSF guided assessment, which really helps align with the CMMC kind of levels throughout every one of those controls. So a ton of value. You can knock it out as quickly as you want to. And then, you don't have to buy it. You just output the report and you're good to go. Or if you want to do the trend analysis, you can buy the whole module and enjoy assessments whenever you want. There's also a handful of features coming down the pipe that I'll quickly mention. The ability to assign individual questions to different users, the ability to assign sections to different groups of users. So you can say, hey, this is my IAM team. I'm going to send it over to them. This is for the vulnerability management team. You can also bring in your GRC team and have them do the administration from our portal. Really no limitations there. So I know this was quick and I talk really fast. I appreciate everybody for bearing with me. I was always told I have the face for radio and the voice for mime. So I think I've ended it right on time. Appreciate the time. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks all.